Hello and welcome to Chromograph on Tour. This is Lanyon Quoit, one of the Neolithic monuments of West Cornwall, of which there are plenty here. Last year I photographed Menantol, which is just half a mile up the road there. This year I'm trying to do Lanyon Quoit. What does on tour mean? Well, this is my annual 2-day trip to Penzance or West Penwith, Cornwall, where I'm going to attend the Montal festivities. So there's going to be some street photography, lots of colourful people dancing, all sorts of things going on. But I'm also going to interweave it with some landscape photography, some architecture, and the first thing that I'm going to do is Lanyon Quoit. So here it is, Neolithic monument. I believe the capstone fell off and was replaced. In about 1815. So these things are never entirely authentic, but this is still pretty good. There's various compositions available, but I'm going to set this down and start looking for them. I've also got to watch out for the cow poo. Conditions are bright and sunny, but that's not entirely ideal, but there is some high cloud around. Let's see if we can find a composition which includes perhaps some of that cloud, maybe looking into the sun or even through Lanyon Quoit to the mine beyond. That's another possibility. So yes, a couple of compositions here, 4 sheets of HP5, no, Ortho 80 to expend on this, so really looking forward to it. As you can see behind me, the Quoit is a massive structure made of granite, the capstone and 3 supporting columns with another stone over there. It's set in the middle of moorland. As you can also see, putting an extra layer in my boots, because actually when you get up here the conditions are much more challenging, although it's still by Penwith standards pretty good, and I guess it was pretty horrible last week, or good depending on what you wanted. I would have loved to come here with ice and snow and frost, but you don't get that very often here. This is a place that is generally very mild by UK standards. So what I'm going to do now is get out the Magic Viewfinder app and see if I can identify a composition that will work, or a couple of compositions maybe. So yes, I'll crack on and do that.
The Magic Viewfinder app helps to identify different viewpoints and is a useful note-taking tool that certainly speeds up the amount of time taken to get your compositions started. But of course there is no substitute for the real thing. The grey bars at top and bottom represent the limitations of the app.
I've identified possible compositions, one of which is on the other side, one of which is over there. I'm now going to get the 4x5 out. It's loaded with Ilford Ortho 80. This is a film that's not sensitive to red light so much, so gives distinctive results. Lighting wise, it's perhaps not ideal at the moment, but there are some high clouds up there, and I'll show you those in a minute. And also there are some shower clouds in that distance over there, but the wind, as far as I can tell, is coming from that direction. The sun is quite bright, but it's low in the sky. Plenty of shadows, contrast. So let's get cracking and try and firm up this composition. And now I'm standing in the position I want to be approximately to get the first composition done. So the Lanyon Quoit is there, so I can see all 3 columns. There's these rocks down in front which are leading the eye in. There's a mine in the distance. The difficulty I have is with the sun and my shadow, so whether I can crouch down to make this composition or stand a little way away, I don't know. But I have a go at setting it up. So I'm going to move you around to see what I'm doing. So I'll be back with you in a second. Composition roughly set up. I'm still having to deal with the problems of the shadow of the camera and myself. Whether that comes out later in Photoshop might be an option, but I'd rather not if possible, so we may have to work around this. It'd be nice to get some clouds actually, just to soften things up a bit. That might work. We're much more on the horizon then, and then the only things which are distracting are the various telegraph poles, so I'll do that. Let's take the camera down to where I am, or where I was. Yeah, now it's all got to be lined up again, so I'll spare you that misery. I think we're not doing it, are we? I have to forget that. I'll try and figure out a composition that doesn't have a shadow in it. Okay, so I've shifted to the other side of the Quoit, because I couldn't get a composition without a shadow in it. So now the sun is more or less shining directly across us. So I'm going to be careful of flare in this case, so I'll perhaps shade the lens with the dark side when I get round to it. But I've got to fine tune the composition, get an exposure meter reading. I've got the Pentax spot meter out, ready to do that. We're not quite there yet. Still got to fine tune that composition. Okay, so we're set up, horizontal composition, f22 at 1/30th of a second is what I've measured to. There's another guy here doing pretty much the same as me. He seems to be getting the same sort of results, so let's see how we get on with this. I'll get the film loaded, make the exposure, and then we'll perhaps try and find another composition. I was really hoping these clouds might come over, but they seem to be going away rather than to me, so never mind. So I've got the film holders here, and I forgot that of course I've changed from HP5 to Ortho 80, so to remeasure I'm now down to an 8th at f22. So let's get the film in. Test fire. Yeah, 1, 2 test fires. Sounds about right. Let's make an exposure. First sheet of film, Ortho 80. There is a bit of high cloud, not a whole lot. I think I might get my polarizer out perhaps. Now, let's get that lined up. We're all set. He's shading the lens with that. There you go. First one in the bag always feels better, doesn't it?
For this image, I'm happy with the exposure, the composition, and the sharpness. What I'm less happy with is the lack of detail in the sky. There is some, but not a whole lot.
I'm going to try the polarizer. Tried comparing the meter readings with and without, and it's about 2 stops. So I'll need to change the shutter speed from an 1/8 to a 1/2 second. 1, 2, still at f22. That's the chosen aperture, and I'll fit the filter now. I'll lock that on. It's not moving anywhere. Yes, that's locked on. Won't need to do anything else because there's no vignetting on this sort of thing. So, assuming the composition hasn't changed, and I will check that. So, open up the iris again. Still at f22. Let's go back to 5.6. Under here. Any changes? Doesn't really look like it. Let's get the loop out. The loop. Yep. Just might adjust the focus just a tad. Yeah. Okay. Right, sorted. Let's do the next one. Right, next shot with the polarizer, added 2 stops for the polarizing effect on the exposure. So now let's get this second one in the bag. I said this Intrepid, it does have lots of good features, but sturdiness isn't one of them. Shutter is cocked. Okay, it's ready. Make that exposure. Oh, we've got a bit of a change in the lighting. Is that good or not? I don't know. Right. So, 2 shots made. I think that light might have dropped a bit, so we may possibly have underexposed there. However, the cloud cover is helping with the softness. Might be able to have an exposure from over there. Excellent. 2 shots, same composition, one with the polarizing filter.
This image is unfortunately considerably overexposed, caused by me not stopping down the lens after sending it up. That has also resulted in very thin depth of field. However, it is an interesting effect.
Sorted again. I'm hoping that I can get away with keeping my shadow out of this composition. So we're back in position 1 originally. We're on a horizontal composition. What I have is I've used some downward shift to allow it to have the foreground in as well as the midground and the far distance. So check the focus. I'll need to re-meter again though, so let's do it. So looking at a mid-grey, it's about 11. Looking at sky, it's about 14. Darkest parts of the image about 10, maybe 9. So that translates to about 1/4 second at f/22. So that would be the case without filters. So let's put that on. Let's go to f/22, 1/4 second. Let's do one without filters, and then let's do one with a yellow filter. Okay, so film is loaded and composition is set up. I'm still thinking about whether I might do a vertical instead because there's more clouds up there, but the sun is back out. The sun is gradually moving over that way, and that means the shadows are gradually moving that way. So it is possible now to get a composition without too much shadow in it, but I'm going to wait till the sun gets clouded over again for a minute. So okay, sun's gone in again, so let's quickly make this exposure. Dark slide out. Oh, test the shutter. Okay, that's done. Dark slide out. There we go. Tell you what, these cable releases you get off the internet are cheap and nasty. I'll get a better one next time. Right, so let's get that back in. Let's get on.
With this composition, we're beginning to get somewhere. It's generally sharp. I like the composition and the way the pillars of the quoit are separated and the way the eye is led into the background.
Okay, so switched the phone back up as battery died on the DJI. Just to say that last composition with a yellow filter, no extra added exposure because it didn't seem to make any difference. 1/4 second between f/22 and f/32. Hopefully the shadow wasn't in the picture. Sun was intermittently coming out and back in again. Yeah, so that's us done.
This is probably my favourite of the 4 images. The vertical composition, I think, adds some impact. The yellow filter has brought in some sky detail, and overall it's nice and sharp throughout.